What is up, everybody? Welcome to Talk of the Tundra, GSPN, and Blue Wire's Green Bay Packers podcast. I am your host, Numac, and today I am joined by the always lovely Ti Windisch. Ti, how you doing?
I'm pretty good. I signed up to do a pod today, I think without realizing what trying to closely watch a third week of preseason game and be ready to do a pod about it entails exactly. I thought, going into Talk of the Tundra, it's like, oh yeah, love football, really have gotten more into it in the last 4 years. I was into it as a kid. Oh, it's so easy to watch football. This will be great. And I'm sitting there and we're texting each other. Danny Etling is running around out there trying to throw darts. It's just like, all right, I don't know how much more. I don't know how many more real takeaways I can have, but I'm good. I'm good. I'm excited to talk about the things we're going to talk about more than Danny Etling on this podcast. And I'm also excited that preseason is over and we don't have to do this again.
Yeah, it's shout out John in the Discord last night. Said that it's really. Oh, by the way, join the GSPN Discord at gspn.info.
Everything at
Get in there.
gspn.info,
Everything's
baby.
in there.
Yeah.
But he said now that we have 3 preseason games, he's so thankful that we don't have a fourth because I can't imagine sitting through a fourth preseason game watching this. I guess we'll say lackluster football.
Yeah. To say the least, but still, I think we've got some good takeaways, right? Some actual interesting things to talk about. Whether they're fun or not is up for debate, but there's certainly some Packers takeaways, even from this Week 3 preseason game, that I'm excited to get into.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start with I guess the elephant in the room with Jordan Love. He was coming off a game against the Saints that he looked really good, and we were all kind of really excited to see that big step from him. This game was a little different. He had to go against the number 1 defense for the first 2 series of the game, and you could definitely tell that uh, since the Packers at their starters and pretty much all of their specialist players, that the skill gap between the Chiefs' first defense and the Packers' second string offense was pretty large, and it definitely showed. Love was not seeing any open receivers on that first drive. I think the first 2 drives they went 3 and out, and it was tough sledding. It was hard to watch, but once he got settled in and some of those starters started to rotate out, he did start playing a little better, especially on that touchdown drive that ultimately ended in a touchdown from Tyler Goodson.
Yeah, I thought the best thing from Love in this game was his pocket presence was really good. He ends up getting sacked 1 time for 0 yards lost. It was really, he knew the pressure was there. He started to scramble. He couldn't really get anywhere, but that was it. But I mean, for all the times he dropped back, and there was certainly pressure. As you mentioned, the Chiefs had, I think, all of their first team, or at least most. I don't know if guys like Chris Jones were playing, but they had a lot of their best players in there defensively. And this is a Packers team who was not playing their ones, at receiver or on the line. And obviously, even their ones on the offensive line probably don't include 2 all-pro level tackles when healthy. So, if you're talking about not their current version of the ones, it's really not their best group by any means. But I thought his poise in the pocket was really impressive. I thought he moved around there well, sensed pressure, was able to either scramble or extend plays. The problem was not much was done with a lot of those plays. I think that the touchdown drive, it seemed like they were just, they had better first reads. He didn't have to do that as much.
Right.
But the first 2 drives, he's moving around. At one point, I'm like, oh, God, he's going to get sacked. But he just moves around perfectly. And he's ready. You can tell he's ready to throw downfield, which we know Matt LaFleur loves. He's talked about, right? Like, he really wants Jordan Love to be aggressive and not be Jimmy G, essentially. But there just wasn't anything there. So I'm not even blaming Love that much because, as you said, I think the Kansas City defensive backs just pretty much had everything taken away. I mean, I haven't gotten to see the all 22 or anything to see if we just couldn't see with our TV angle what was downfield, but it just didn't look like there was anything there. So, I think he got a little too aggressive later. We can talk about the interception. But I thought for Love, it was just it was fine. I wasn't overly impressed. It was kind of funny looking at, I saw somebody shared, I think after he came out of the game, this week, the long throws were his bugaboo. He was really bad on those. When it felt like the Saints game, the short throws, he couldn't convert. So trying to evaluate Jordan Love is a little maddening. All I know is like he does some things I think very well. Like there's a lot of plays where you look and you go, yeah, that's an NFL quarterback. And that
Yep.
seems like a low bar, maybe. But not everybody drafted in the NFL draft, even in the first round, ends up being a guy who you say, oh yeah, that looks like an NFL quarterback. Maybe one with plus side upside. It's just hard to tell. I certainly don't think you walk away from this preseason either saying, oh yeah, he's going to be great, let's push Aaron Rodgers out, or oh man, he's a bust, let's cut him on cut day. Like I still think we're somewhere in the middle, which is maybe the worst place to be, but
Yep.
I think that's where we're at.
Yeah, it's definitely not where I wanted to be coming out of the preseason. I wanted to get a more definitive answer because like that decision is going to have to be made eventually. Whether we talked about it on the either the last podcast or just you and I forget, but they have to make a decision like what they want to do for extending him or cutting him and
The fifth year
essentially cut
option
the
is going to be I
yeah
think that's the inflection point, right?
right
It was 2 more years, including this year before that.
yeah almost certain they have this year and next year on him.
Although
So
they might have to decide after this season.
I think they do.
I think it's like NBA where you have to do it a year or two early. So
Hmm.
that's going to be a fascinating one. I don't think we know what the value looks like, but for a first round quarterback, I think it would end up being a pretty nice payday. I mean, what did the Panthers just took Sam Darnold? So I know he was drafted higher, but it's quite an amount of money.
Oh yeah. So the
And now he's not
Packers
starting for them.
yeah. So the Packers have this year and next year
Under contract.
under contract, and then 2024 is his club option year.
Yeah,
And then
so
they have probably have to decide next offseason.
For some context, and I gotta look up if it's based on draft stock or what, but Darnold's was 18.9 million. And again, it's
For his fifth year club.
fifth year option. Yeah.
I don't think it'll be that much because
Yeah, because Love was taken late in the first, right?
yeah, Love's annual salary right now is 1.7 million.
Yeah, so Darnold was 4.8 million in the year before. So it'll probably be less, but I would imagine it'll be 8 figures, I would think, for any first round player. I'm just not exactly sure on that. But you can run into, and it's different for the Packers who, I mean, maybe they'd be expecting him to start by then, but kind of awkward right now for Carolina, right? Because they're paying a guy who's not going to play week one. The Browns are paying two guys who aren't going to play for them week one. Like you don't want to end up paying guys who aren't going to be starting for your team and helping. So it's a complicated thing. But let's talk more about Love's preseason than this, because I think neither of us are NFL front office experts at this point in terms of all these specific machinations. I'm certainly not. I know that.
Right. Yeah, me neither. So yeah, so once Love settled in, he started making the throws. We kind of were expecting him to make it with the absence of those long throws. There was a couple in there. I think it was like the second quarter where Love drops back and he just looks like so comfortable. It reminded me of like it was Aaron Rodgers-esque. He just looked like he was in his element. There was nothing different about this drop back or anything else. He just three-step drop back, set his feet, fired a dart to Toure off across the middle for a catch and a big gain. Like that's the things we want to see. We don't want his throws to make it look like they're trying. Like it should just be an ease thing for him at this point. And I think it's starting to get there, but it's not consistently there. He has often times where he telegraphs his throws. I forget. I think it was Tyler Davis, like the third quarter. I watched Love stare at Tyler Davis from the beginning of his route to when he came out of the route, throw it to him for like an 8-yard gain on a slant route, but or not a slant route, a route to the corner. And that's gonna be kind of the stuff that has to get fixed. And I think the scrambling, when he was scrambling, he threw a couple ones that were wild. Like he just didn't have the arm strength to get them there on the scramble. And so it's little things, but ultimately this is hopefully the last time we'll see Jordan Love this season, and I'm coming away feeling better than I was after the Kansas City game last year.
Yeah, maybe we'll see him in a week 18. That'd be fine. But yeah, hopefully the last time we see him, at least for several weeks.
Right.
The interception he threw, I know I think it was the first week of the preseason, and we were not able to watch that game because we were at Wisconsin Timber Rattlers to watch Jackson Churio.
That's right.
But listen to Cruising for a Bruising wherever you get this podcast. But I know he had some like INTs that weren't his fault. They were like tip passes or whatever. This one was. I don't think it was a bad throw. I think it was bad process. Like,
yeah,
trying to get the tight end on the seam route, I believe it was, and the safety's over the top. And it's just, I almost wonder some of this stuff, like you mentioned, trying to make these throws on the run when he just didn't have quite the arm. And this ball, is this the downside of being in a QB room with Aaron Rodgers, right? Like, I think you can learn a lot from him, but he is not one of those quarterbacks where you can bring a young guy in and say, yeah, just watch what this, you can't replicate his process on the field. You probably shouldn't replicate it off the field either. Don't triple check with the NFL substances policy first. But no, I don't know. Maybe that's reading too much into it, and it's just a young quarterback making mistakes. But I think unless your young guy is like literally Patrick Mahomes or something, you just can't try and do everything Rodgers does. You just can't do it all. But it wasn't awful. It wasn't like, oh, what were you thinking there? It ended up being more of an arm punt. Although the Packers offense looked like the Packers special teams on the return from that interception, which was unfortunate, but
ideal.
Fine day for Love, as we mentioned. Not super encouraging, but wasn't a pull your hair out day, I don't think either.
Right. Just to touch brief on that interception. Ryan Wood tweeted last night after the game, an interview with Jordan Love, that he said on the interception, well, looking back on it, just maybe take the shorter throw and keep moving the sticks. Yep, that's exactly kind of what we were just talking about.
This reminds me when I played golf in high school and 3 people in a row at putting practice left the putt short. So of course I go up there and I putt it so damn hard it goes off the green, right? Like, I do wonder if this is all LaFleur, at least that we've heard. It seems like everything is about wanting to be more aggressive. I wonder if that's a little bit of an overcorrection. Like, I need to take this bomb. That's what coaches want to see.
Right. And yeah, because I think like if he does complete it, it's a very nice throw. Like what I kind of like mentioned in the Discord when that happened was it was a nice throw. It wasn't like just this wildly inaccurate throw. It was a nice ball. It was just a touch out in front of. I think it was throwing to Winfree, but I'm just guessing at this point. But just that little bit touched in front of him, which is why it ended up getting picked. So, yeah, overall, good game, not great game, but we'll have to take this conversation next year.
Oh, did we say the score?
17-10.
17-10.
You guys are,
Green Bay scores all 10 in the second quarter. Hey, it's preseason. Yeah, it's not. That's not the important part of the game.
That's right. You had mentioned earlier that this game wasn't a game you're going to pull your hair out for Jordan Love, but it was for the special teams. Special teams was abysmal. I don't know what's going on with in training camp and with Rich Biasacha coaching up the players, but nothing's been fixed, it seems. I think the only bright spot is Pat O'Donnell.
My man.
He's kicking the hell out of the ball. I think his first kick was 70 yards and a 5-second hang time, which that works, but when the gunners and the coverage gives up a 40-yard return, it nullifies what is a great kick. And that happened a few times last night where he just has amazing punts and pushes the punt returner back 10, 20 yards to almost the goal line, and they return it almost to midfield. And I think that's going to be a defining moment or theme of this season, is we expect this defense to be so good, right? Like we know they're good. They can't consistently start their defensive drives from midfield. Like that's just cutting them off at the knees, essentially. It's hard. Like playing defense is hard, and giving the offense that big of a head start to just need 15 yards to get into field goal range to keep points off the board is difficult for the defense to do every single drive, especially, and then also not give up touchdowns. So I don't know what happens between now and next week, but 25, I think it was 25 players last night sat for the Packers. A lot of those 25 are playing special teams. So it's going to be an interesting process to see who ends up being on special teams and if anything changes between now and week 1 against the Vikings.
Yeah, I think special teams is the unit you can probably write off the least amount of performance to its preseason because, like you mentioned, it's not like you're going, oh, we don't have whatever player, right? We don't
Yeah.
have
Al
Preston
Lazard
Smith
isn't,
out
yeah,
there. Yeah, like that's what's killing our spec. You should be able to play special teams with relatively anonymous players. And it's not saying it's not difficult. Clearly the Packers have shown over the last several years
right.
it's quite difficult if you don't know exactly what to do there. But it shouldn't be this bad. And I think if there's one punt return or something, you go, okay, they messed up once, that's fine. It was just continually bad. Like pretty much
Yep.
every point where it could have been bad, it was. You look at the first Chiefs scoring drive, that was Pat O'Donnell's 69-yard punt to the KC 22, and the Chiefs end up starting their drive at the 38 because they get 16 yards on that. And that was one of their worst punt returns of the
Right.
day. If you look at how they were doing the entire day long, so it's really just you just can't do it. I mean, Corey Coleman returns a kick for 45 yards. He averages nearly 16 yards on 3 punt returns. Jerrion Ely has a 20-yard punt return. Sky Moore, their rookie wide receiver, has a 35-yard punt return. Like there's like multiple returns for 30 or more yards. Also, fun Pat O'Donnell fact, real quick.
Yep.
He punted for more yards than either team gained on offense.
I see that now. 340 yards.
338 yards on 6 punts. He averaged 56 yards a punt. Guy has a boot.
Yeah.
I think, can we call him the punt god now that the actual punt god is a terrible person?
Yeah, you might want to.
Can that be part of the legal process? Can we set the nickname?
We'll talk to Roger Goodell about that.
Yeah, well, I'd rather not talk to Raj, to be honest.
Yeah, fair point. But yeah, I think the big number there that of all the numbers you listed is the average for the punt returns was 20 yards. That just can't happen. Like if you're end up going 3 and out when you're pinned back deep on like the 6-7 yard line and you just 3 and out, it happens often because playing deep in your own territory is hard. And you have to expect Donald to boot off a 70-yard punt. Well, that gets them to the 30, right? Well, a 20-yard punt return puts them at midfield again for averaging, like for taking those averages. And that's just it takes more to flip the field than a good punter. You need good coverage too, and it just isn't there. So we'll see, but I'm not really excited to watch special teams going forward this season. I feel like I'm going to go bald by the end of it.
Yeah, it was, to be specific, 19.7 yards per punt return. And I feel like punts are the ones you should be able to control more, especially when you have a good punter I guess the farther you punt, the more upside, but still, you should be able to limit the damage to a certain extent. It's not like the ball got there too fast and these guys got 20 yards before the special teams got there. They just weren't able to contain the returners. And then kicks were worse. The 2 kick returns for Kansas City average of 31 yards. I mean, that's obviously up by one being 45, but their worst kick return of the day that they actually returned was 17 yards. It's just like, you just can't have these regularly long returns. The funny thing is, the Chiefs' first touchdown was actually quite a long drive. It was not one of the longer returns of the day, I believe, but still, I think their first score was a field goal on a short field where they only had to move the ball like 36 yards to get in the field goal range and score the first points of the game.
Yeah. They're trying to find
their first touchdown was a 90-yard drive.
Yeah, exactly. And that's fine if that happens. Like that's going to happen time to time, but you'd like to make them obviously drive longer than only have to go 50 yards or so.
Well, I mean, you look at the first play of first drive in the second half. It's a touchdown drive for the Chiefs. They have to go 54 yards. Like if you only have to go 54 yards, there's just going to be more of those. And obviously, this wasn't the Packers' first team defense,
right?
But even the first team defense, like it's a game of inches. And if you give up several feet, every
Yeah,
special teams play, that's not going to bode well for how your defense holds up.
right. And that touchdown specifically, the 50-yard bomb that was to their backup tight end, was a coverage issue. Like that happens when you expect one corner to pick up the streaking receiver essentially, and the safety doesn't help. Like that happens more than once a season, just because it's how defense works. When you expect handoffs like that, like handoffs for the defense, you're going to have times where there is miscommunication because unfortunately there is not telepathy going from these defensive players, so they can't exactly communicate exactly when they're picking up. They just have to rely on their instincts and the practice that they've been getting in. So it's just, yeah, those big plays hurt a lot more on a shortened field.
Yeah, this was one of the drives where the defensive line that the Packers had against Kansas City did not hold up great. So it was three straight plus runs, 7, 9, and then 7 yards to kind of body blows. I mean, more than body blows. Those are really
Yeah.
effective runs. But
Yep.
then it's like you give up, so 3+ runs, and then one, as you said, kind of a short pass that just goes. But they're already at the 31 when that happens because of the starting position. So then you're at the 2 yard line, and unfortunately, the Packers did fail to score from the 1, but the Chiefs did
Yeah.
not at this possession. Yeah, it's almost hard to believe sometimes because I feel like with the special teams, a lot of the times, I think when a fan base gets ready to yell about something, it doesn't hold up that long. Usually things only go wrong for so long. I think we've all been there, right? You type up the tweet like, "Oh my God, Devontae Wyatt's just getting blown up front," and he immediately like makes a great tackle or something. It feels like that's usually how it goes.
Right.
You could have scheduled before the game the special teams tweets and been right every time. Like literally outside of Pat O'Donnell. And I think they didn't miss any kicks. I guess that's fine. But I don't know what happened outside of those, I guess just the literal legs themselves that you would go, oh yeah, that's that. Okay, at least that was good on special teams.
Right. Weirdly enough, I feel like they got a little better as the game went on. Like they were getting chunked in the first half on kick returns and punt returns, but um for um my notes that I took, it was just fine coverage, nothing of note for a couple of them, but the 46 yards to start the second half, thanks. But there was a couple where the Packers punt coverage kind of swarmed how I'd want them to swarm, typically. So it was a tiny little nugget of sunshine versus the bad that was the first half and then the beginning of the second half.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. I think later in the game, I mean, also, I think I was, quite frankly, losing a little steam of being fully plugged into the game in the fourth quarter. But it did
Yeah.
feel like, you're right, it did feel like there weren't as many, oh, this is a. So maybe the guys at the bottom of the special teams depth chart should be moved up a little bit. I don't know how much it really
Or
changes, but
to be a pessimist, it's probably because the Chiefs
yeah.
fourth, third, fourth string is doing punt returns and not their starters.
Well, I do wonder how much it changes. And I don't know how much
Right.
insight we would have outside from like meticulously trying to watch and see exactly who's out there. But I know the Chiefs played more of their first team guys than the Packers did. We didn't see Mahomes. It was Chad Henne started the game for Kansas City. But I do wonder, like, does it really change that much? Does it really matter that much? Does that go into why they were so bad early? It's not like, I mean, it's obviously not on the team anymore, but it's not like Tyreek Hill was back there and doing the damage on returns. It was mostly
Right.
anonymous players. Did Kansas City have their ace gunner team, and did that make the difference? I don't know, but I feel like it probably shouldn't have been successful as it was anyway, is my takeaway.
Right. Yeah, I think that kind of wraps up in a nutshell. I don't have too much else to say about special teams. I'd rather not.
Hopefully, a lot of it does end up being it's preseason because
Hopefully.
this is not a sustainable way to win football games against even solid teams. Like you just can't be on the back foot like this, especially with the questions at wide receiver.
Yep. Strong agree. But moving on to kind of touch back a little bit of what you had mentioned when Kansas City drove the field and they scored from like the 1 yard line. That sort of made a light bulb go off my head to talk about Micah Abernathy and some of the defensive players who who showed out last night. We'll start with him because that's just where where I want to start. But I thought he played really well. He led the team in tackles with, I believe it was 6. And on that touchdown from the 1 or 2 yard line, he should have had a pick six. He got pretty blatantly held. The blocking receiver had a handful of his jersey across the chest and held him back from jumping the route, which he was jumping, and he was going to, if he catches it, bring it all the way. And I really liked what I saw from him last night. He was all over the place, hitting with purpose, and just kind of similar to how Quay Walker was playing in the first quarter. He was just everywhere and being in plays, and he was the person that saved the touchdown on the long catch to tackle him at the 2, and then he goes and plays the other side of the field and almost comes with an interception. Ultimately not, and having the Kansas City score. But I'm really excited to see what he looks like in the regular season. I'm pretty sure he makes the roster because of how shallow we are at safety, but how much he plays is yet to be determined. But I really like his game, and just his instincts for the ball are pretty blatant at this point after how well he performed in the Saints game and almost coming up with an interception last night against Kansas City.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things like especially for secondary players, I think like both a sense for the ball, which we saw in the should have been pick six, and just the ability to get involved. And I think tackles can be a confusing metric sometimes if you don't watch, because like if you give up a bunch of catches and then tackle the guy, that's not really ideal. But I don't think that's where Abernathy's were coming from. He did lead the team, 6 total tackles. He's also tied for the lead with solo tackles with 4. So all over the place. I think a good game for him. I mean, a safety named Micah in Green Bay, I feel like that's a winning recipe. But
I'd say.
But I thought it was a good game for him, and I think certainly with the safety room not overly stacked. I think they have obviously good players at the position, but not a ton of them. Right. I think he's one of 2 guys who it seems like, and I'm not as plugged into the roster, so when we talk about cut day, I'll defer mostly to you, I think, but one of 2 guys on the defensive side who it seems like may have gotten themselves some security. Maybe Abernathy had it coming into this game too, but there's another defensive player who I think maybe just one play, maybe it was a totally random play, but I do think overall it was pretty impressive.
Right. Let's talk about him. But it's Jack Heflin. That tackle for a loss on the running back was incredible. It was such a fun play to see. Like you love seeing defensive players make big hits in the backfield. Like it's what you want to see every time. I tweeted it out, but it was shades of Jadeveon Clowney when he played for South Carolina against I believe it was Michigan, and he just blew up the quarterback in the backfield on a RPO. And it was just like, yeah, that's exactly what you needed on that 3rd and short and 4th and short. I think it was 3rd and short. It's what you need to stop the drive, because most of the time with a good running back, you're going to get that 1 yard. It's hard to get a yard, but with the way that Kansas City run game was last night, they were kind of getting all they wanted in the run game. And so to make that play, stunt that drive, and get the punt off was a plus. And that might have been like the flashiest play for him last night. But he also had that forced fumble. I think it was in the 3rd or 4th, either late 3rd quarter or early 4th quarter. He just reaches out and punches the ball out. Like those are the kind of plays that you really want to see from your defensive line. Just getting a hand in there and disrupting the running back and making something out of nothing. They ultimately recovered it. The Kansas City did.
It did lead to a big, I think like an 11-yard loss. I was just looking that up too. Yeah.
Yeah. So they retained the ball, but it's a big move backwards for Kansas City. And what ultimately was just him reaching out, trying to make something happen. And that's what you got to do.
And that's one of the funny, like he kind of gets robbed on that, because I think he doesn't end up being the one who registers the tackle later. So doesn't get a tackle for loss, despite that being such a big play. So I think 2 plays where you could look at and say he either helps to stall out a drive or potentially, with the big loss, and then does with that tackle. And I think clearly there was miscommunication on Kansas City's offensive line. Like it's not like Heflin started the play by, pancaking an offensive tackle and then getting through there. But still, I think, something on display is not every defensive lineman, especially at this point in the preseason, even with a hole, is able to burst through that hole, find the ball carrier, and make it a good, strong tackle and make sure that they're taken down. There's a lot of guys who maybe they're not there quick enough, and the running back gets out of there and is able to get whatever they needed, like a yard, right? Like,
Right.
if you get to the line, that's most of the battle. You kind of just need to fall forward after that. I thought, even given the circumstance was Taylor made for him to make a play, you still have to make the play, right? And I think he certainly did that on multiple occasions. He ends up tied for second in tackles. Quite the group of Packers with 5 or more tackles in this game. Micah Abernathy, Jack Heflin, and then Quay Walker, who we talked about earlier, as expected, has looked great moving around as a linebacker.
Absolutely.
Heflin also had 4, so he, Abernathy, and Tariq Carpenter led the team in solo tackles with 4. Heflin leads the team in tackles for loss with a 1, although, again, he's getting a little cheated there for not getting the fumble counted. But I thought certainly had some great moments, seemed like overall was solid as well. It wasn't like a boom or bust thing with him. And, hopefully he can make the roster and continue to up that stock.
If there's one thing I really wish I didn't have to see in the Green Bay defensive part for tackles, it's at the bottom where Amari Rodgers and Pat O'Donnell both have 1 tackle. Like, can we refrain from wide receivers and punters having tackles, please? That'd be a good wish.
Yeah, it'd be ideal if especially Pat O'Donnell.
Right.
Punters should not. It's one of those. Where do you come in on if Rodgers throws a pick, and he'll probably throw like 4 all year, and the guy's running toward him regular season, should he try to tackle him or no?
I think the context of the game matters.
A little. I say almost always no.
If it's like a tie game late in the game, I need him to make that tackle. If he's the last line of defense, he needs to make the tackle.
Maybe if it's a tie game late, if it's first 3 quarters or not a close game, I say no. Don't even try. Who was it that got? Do you remember? Someone hurt their shoulder doing it, like in the last 2 years.
Probably somebody lame.
Probably.
I could see like Daniel Jones trying to make a tackle.
It might have been
breaking himself.
Well, it's one of those. It's like if your pitcher gets on first base, like I think was it Freddie Peralta who got hurt? No, it was somebody else who got hurt.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I forget who it was.
It was Woodruff, I think. I think that was one of the, maybe not. I don't know, but
I'm not gonna answer because I don't know.
I think it was one of the Woodruff injuries. But it's like, just be out at first. It's not that important. You as a base runner, not that vital to us. You able to pitch every 5 days, very vital to us.
Yeah.
Where I kind of come down on the tackles, although I'd probably be pissed if you just let someone run by. Maybe you just got to do it. Just push a little, maybe not a full on shoulder into a running guy.
And to be fair, I couldn't tell you the last time I saw Rodgers. Yeah, play defense off of the interception.
He puts himself in good positions by not throwing them, which is probably the right thing to do.
Probably the right thing to do. But yeah, I don't think I could even tell you the last time I saw Rodgers pursuing.
And that's why he's been pretty healthy outside of the old Cito.
There's no wood to knock on. This isn't good. Yeah, he's been. Thank you. Appreciate it. He's been healthy, which was something we didn't see for the middle part of his career there between like 2012 and like 2018. So here's hoping he continues the trend. Maybe the ayahuasca is doing something good. Let's move on to back to offense and not Jordan Love, but the receivers.
Yeah.
We'll talk, and briefly before we get into the receivers, I think Tyler Goodson probably won that third running back spot last night. It
was him versus Taylor, essentially, right?
Yeah, pretty much him versus Patrick Taylor. Dexter Williams is not going to be on the roster. That's pretty much a given. But yeah, Tyler Goodson, 7 carries, 28 yards, and a touchdown. And Patrick Taylor, 7 carries, 34 yards, and what should have been a touchdown, but couldn't see the ball when he rushed at the 1 yard line. But I think the difference is that Tyler Goodson's run on his touchdown run was not something we've seen from Patrick Taylor and what he can do with the ball when he's running. Like it was just so explosive and exciting to watch. It was honestly Aaron Jones just busting through the line, hitting the spin to get into the end zone. It was just exciting. Like his His spin move reminded me of Michael Vick in like 2004 when he juked out those Vikings defenders. They both ran to each other. Like, is that exactly
Yeah.
what happened? He spun, and then both the Chiefs guys just ran to each other.
I mean, this is like even before the spin was obviously the highlight. That's so sick. But even before that, like he's in an area where there's Chiefs defenders, like there's traffic, and it was just the burst. And I think you mentioned at some point the Andy Herman tweet about like you can't teach that, you can teach special teams.
Yeah,
And that's exactly like just in open space, there's a difference in speed levels. This isn't a defensive lineman. That's a corner, number 23, who ends up getting stuck in the spin cycle, who
right.
is only a couple feet away and just like cannot close the distance at all. Like Goodson is just gone. And that's one of those things where it's like, you can be a great sound running back who picks the gap, but maybe you just don't have that. And it looked to me like there were times when Goodson got enough space to get into the open field and
Yeah,
defenders just couldn't close. And that's like, if you're talking about a third running back,
yeah,
why not go for this upside and go
yeah.
for a guy who makes plays like that? Also, good to see he, I think, had nearly as many yards receiving as he did rushing, which is, no, not nearly as many, but he did have
Yeah.
5 catches for 26 yards, which is pretty solid.
Which is good.
Yeah.
On that run, watching Josh Myers absolutely obliterate that linebacker was amazing. He flattened him and pancaked him like it was like man versus child,
He
essentially.
wanted more too. He
He
was like,
wanted more.
he
He
was looking
followed up.
after that. Like, who else could I find?
Yeah.
But honestly, shouts to him because he was going in for the guy who Goodson spun out, and he kind of
Yeah.
held back and didn't get in his way. And that is one of the most frustrating things you see is like when a run is going to
Yeah.
go long like this, and one of the hogs from the offensive line just gets in the way. You're like, oh no, I know you're trying to do the right thing, but move.
Right. That was Isaiah McDuffie last week. That he was trying to make a tackle on what was going to be a long run, and in between Isaiah McDuffie and the Saints player was another Saints offensive lineman. And so instead of tackling the guy, Isaiah McDuffie just pushed the offensive lineman into the ball carrier out of bounds. Like, that's one way to make a tackle. Like, it worked. So
Yeah.
exactly what you're talking about.
Get the guy down and you're good.
Yeah, I think there's a pretty easy decision there for Goody just to keep Goodson and either hope Patrick Taylor will sign in the practice squad or find luck elsewhere. So
Yeah, I never know. It feels like it's so easy to find good running backs. I mean, Kansas City has Ronald Jones on there, like fighting for a roster spot, it seems.
that's so crazy.
I mean, he had the best yards per carry of any true running back in this game at 5.4. Again, preseason it's sloppy, but I don't know how much demand there would be for Patrick Taylor, but you never know if some team like the Ravens last year ends up pretty hard up for ball carriers.
Right. And like just touching on Ronald Jones, I tweeted it last night, like just thinking about it. It's crazy that Ronald Jones went from 1,000-yard rusher in Tampa to being a Super Bowl winner, to being backup to Leonard Fournette, to being essentially let go / just they let him walk, to now fighting for a roster spot. Like that is I guess, how running backs are treated in the NFL now. They're just, if you're not the top 3, you're kind of just expendable. It's like a rotating door of people just getting bodies in there and finding fresh people.
Which is why if you don't have someone who does something special, like Packers basically have 2 of those guys and Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, probably shouldn't pay that much if you can just say, hey, I guess we'll just have Ronald Jones be our backup running back for nothing, and he'll be very good for us, or fine, depending on our offensive line.
Yeah. Todd Gurley is a free agent and like 27 years old, so.
I mean, him, I think with the way he runs, I can kind of see why, but it is still, it is sad. I do feel for running backs, although from a team building standpoint, again, if you're not doing something really special, as much as it hurts, probably not going to give Todd Gurley a 5-year contract or anything.
No. But yeah, let's move on to the receivers and really talk about what has been the main thread this preseason, which is the battle for the last 1, maybe 2 roster spots in that wide receiver depth chart. Juwann Winfree, Amari Rodgers, and like it's Sam, right? Samori Toure. Samuel.
Yeah, I mean it's
Samori. Yeah,
Samori.
my apologies,
Yeah.
Samori.
Maybe Sam for short.
Yeah. So coming out of last week.
Wait, real quick, can we just set like, what do you see as the top? We don't have to go through and order them, but just the players, just so we have it set of what exactly cutoff point we're looking at here.
So receivers that are making the roster are Alan Lazard,
Yeah.
Sammy Watkins, Randall Cobb, Christian Watson, Romeo Dobbs.
So that's 5.
And yep, there was one more, I believe.
Are you
But
counting Winfree in there? Is that 6?
that might have been my 6.
Yeah, because it feels like despite he only had 1 catch for 7 yards, but it seemed like he may be more established than some of the other guys who were lighting it up in this game.
Yeah, he definitely I think I did include him as 6 based off of last week's performance. So yeah, I again through the Discord, we're talking in there a lot about stuff.
Yeah,
I had Lazard, Watkins, Cobb, Watson, Dobbs, Winfree, and then this is where the decision needs to be made. If they keep 7, it was probably Rodgers because they were using him so much last week and this week in ways that weren't route running. Whether it's jet sweeps, like they ran so many jet sweeps for that man, or I think they even lined him up in the backfield last night. He had a nice run. 3 rushes for 17 yards. So that's I think his longest was a actual handoff carry for 11. And so I think they're going to end up keeping Amari Rodgers, and then I think Toure is going to the practice squad. But what makes this decision difficult is that Winfree and Toure on their route running have looked really good. Like they run really good routes and catch balls in traffic and catch balls at the height of their jump. Like they haven't looked like young players in that respect, working with Jordan Love against second team defenses. Amari Rodgers has more value as a utility player. I forget who in the GSPN family said it, but it's like Ty Montgomery, where Ty Montgomery started as a wide receiver, and then that one year where the Packers had no running back, they're like, screw it, we'll put Ty Montgomery in the backfield. I think that's a lot of what he reminds me of, and so it's going to be a tough decision for the front office to figure out where they want to go, because there is use for a guy like Amari Rodgers, but I feel like we have Amari Rodgers at home and Aaron Jones. Like they do the same.
That's the opposite. I think you have Amari Rodgers at the store and Aaron Jones.
Right.
He's much better.
Well, right. It's like the point being is that they both are okay to good pass catchers.
Yeah.
And both look like they have, and obviously Aaron Jones is a much better rusher than Amari Rodgers is, but I think like that's where Amari Rodgers' value is lying with the offense right now. He's not doing much past the line of scrimmage and going for route and catching balls. He's showing off his speed in the unique plays, the end arounds, the jet sweeps, the reverses, things like that. So
yeah, I think like, and he's not the first, but Cordero Patterson kind of walked so players like this could run. And I mean, it's kind of sad. Like when Cordero Patterson was first in the league, it feels like teams just didn't understand how to use these hybrid gadget players as well. And now you see with Atlanta, he's having so much success, and he's more basically just a running back now. But I think Amari Rodgers is one of those players. So I think if you're looking at pure wide receiving, Toure and Winfree are just better. And if you're looking at pure rushing, you could probably argue the 2 running backs we talked about earlier are better at rushing by itself than Amari Rodgers are.
Right.
But if you're looking at a mix of the 2 things, none of those 4 players are as good as Amari Rodgers. Right. So it is interesting. It all does depend what direction the Packers want to go. The other side, I think, for keeping Amari Rodgers is, how good is it really to have 7 wide receivers who are all, I mean, not all the same, but all like more prototypical. Right. I mean, Cobb is more of a slot, whatever. But if you have 6, big body typical receivers, does it really help to have 6 versus 5 versus being able to have the flexibility of Amari Rodgers? And I think, you'd want to use him on kick returns more than these other guys, stuff like that. So I think it really all depends. The kick returns might differentiate given the special teams issue.
Yeah, that might make them make the roster.
Yeah, which I think honestly is fine. Like, I don't think I'd be really torn up either way if it's
No.
Rodgers or Toure. Like, as much as, I mean, Toure, let's give him some roses. 6 receptions for 83 yards. Led the team in receiving. Led the game in receiving, actually.
Yep.
Was good, but is this guy irreplaceable or impossible to find another equivalent player? I think probably
Right.
not, right?
Right.
So,
Right.
if you have a plan for Amari Rodgers, I think it's fine. If he ends up returning like half the kicks and does nothing on offense, it would be a little bit of a waste, but I feel like they'll be able to work him in to some extent, you would hope.
Right. Right. You saying that Cordero Patterson walks so that players like this could run. I was like, are you sure that Tavon Austin didn't do this?
Tavon Austin wasn't,
But
he was wasted more.
true. They're also the same draft.
That's crazy.
Tavon Austin was 8 overall, and I think Cordell Patterson was like 23 or something.
Tavon
29.
Tavon Austin was, I say Cordero Patterson because he lasted long enough to actually get to do it, whereas Tavon Austin, like, they just kept lining him up at receiver and then giving him like one end around every 4 weeks. And it's just he wasn't a receiver. You know the other guy I think about with this? I wish we saw him on a team that would do stuff like Amari Rodgers is asked to do offensively.
Mm-hmm.
Devin Hester was never used right on offense.
Never, ever.
Clearly could not catch, could not run routes and catch together. But man, I would have been giving that guy a wide receiver screen, 2 end arounds, a jet sweep, like every game.
Right.
Because clearly there's these guys who it's like they're not fully fledged wide receiver skill sets, but if you can get them the ball in open space, it's going to be special.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we saw a lot of players who it kind of always made sense, but the NFL just really wasn't doing that for a very long time.
Right. I forget every time. I forget that Tavon Austin played for the Packers. He played.
I totally forgot that.
4
I
games.
think I remember being excited
2020.
about the idea of him being on the roster.
Played 4 games in 2020, and then I didn't know he played last year.
Oh my God.
He played for the Jaguars last year. Yeah.
I thought you meant for the Packers. I was I really don't remember that.
Oh, he had 200 yards last year, a touchdown for the Jaguars.
No, maybe he is going to make it long enough to. I mean, they already have who's the guy they drafted, the Jags, that should do the same thing. I don't think it's ETN. They have another guy who seems like he should be a good gadget player too. But yeah, hopefully Tavon Austin can get a little bit of the late career resurgence that we did see from Cordell Patterson.
Hopefully, but yeah, I think that'll be. Hopefully, let's walk this back. The Packers love to make a surprise cut every year. They do it every single year, whether it's Brian Bulaga, which again was Goody wrong. I don't think so because he hasn't done a whole lot for the Chargers since then. My memory is escaping me at this point. Whoever the wide receiver was that Rodgers loved and like raked the front office over the coals for, he ended up going to the Bills. That was
oh my goodness.
I know I can't think of his name. But
Jake Kumaril.
Jake Kumaril was a surprise one because again, fan favorite. Packers legend Jeff Janis when his time came to an end in Green Bay. There's always one surprise cut. And I'm hoping that it isn't that this year because I really don't see anybody that they could be cutting that would make sense. Like if they traded Coleman Landon, which would have been probably that surprise cut, given that he was playing fairly well, but we're just pretty deep on offensive line right now. But I'm hoping that the wide receiver decision is like the decision of the day. I don't think there's any other surprises in store, but whether they keep Winfree, Rodgers, or Toure is what I'm looking forward to on Tuesday. And I'm hoping that I don't have to watch for Heflin and Abernathy, but I think that wide receiver decision is going to be the biggest one.
What about Slayton on the defensive line?
Pretty sure he's a 7th round rookie, so I'd be surprised if they
cut him.
If they cut him, excuse me. If they cut him and didn't sign him to the practice squad,
yeah.
But
I do think Heflin looked better.
Yeah,
but I thought Slayton had some moments too.
Yeah, and that's not even like something I'd be surprised about. I'd like to see him on the practice squad.
Yeah.
But if Tuesday comes, they're like, "Yep, Slayton's cut with the intent to sign to the practice squad." Like, okay, that's not eyebrow raising.
Yeah. Yeah, I think any one of those three wide receivers, we would hope that's, I guess, the most controversial. I don't know if
Yeah,
it will be because,
yeah,
as you mentioned, the Packers have their way of doing things. But
right. I think something that could throw a wrench into things is if they decided to keep Travis Fulgham, who has NFL experience and has like significant NFL experience, a few like touchdowns and yardage playing with the Eagles.
yeah,
I think the Chargers maybe, but for sure the Eagles. And if they decided they want to keep a veteran who like they know they can count on to not make those sort of mental mistakes and know what playing the NFL is, that could throw a wrench in things. But I would expect them to cut him before they keep him.
yeah, yeah. Tribute. When is it Tuesday?
Tuesday.
So Tuesday. So maybe next pod. 'Cause obviously, there's no game next week,
Yep.
or really the week after. The September 11th is the first Packers game.
Yep.
So safe to say we can probably expect a new podcast middle of next week to react to these cuts,
That's right.
and then the week after that we can talk about the getting ready for week one, the
Yep.
Vikings. Can I share my, and this probably doesn't even make sense, but I just want to take a shot in the dark, throw a dart at the surprise cut for in the vein of a
Oh,
vet
boy.
who would save some cap.
Hold on. Let me
So I'm looking at post June 1st cuts, dead money and cap saving. So I found a player who I think doesn't seem like has totally been inspiring and would save about 6 million going forward on the cap.
all right. Let's hear it.
And feel free to tear me up if this is stupid.
Okay.
With the play of Heflin and everything else, Dean Lowry.
That might be stupid.
Okay, fair.
But
Fair. I was. It was in the Bulaga vein. I'm not predicting this. This is my bold prediction, shot in the dark, unexpected vet cut. Because I don't see that many others that would make sense in terms of
yeah.
established guys.
So you could be right is the issue. Like, but I think he's played fairly well in previous years and he's had a good camp from what I've seen reported on Twitter and just reading some of the articles and things. But yeah, I would anticipate him being on the roster.
I would too. This
I'd
is
be
this is a
shocked if they
bold
didn't.
prediction, not a prediction. I want to make
Yeah.
that clear. This is not
Yeah.
like, oh, I think you need to cut Dean Lowry. That's my like. If there's a surprise vet, that's my pick.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd be shocked.
Yeah, that's fine. No, that's
Again, I don't want to be shocked on cut day.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, we're not going to go through the whole roster to figure out
No.
exactly what the numbers are, but it seems like, to put it simply, they should be in a position where they don't have to cut too many guys that are really, really impressive. I did want to float one player to you. I noticed I was looking through some lists of like the highest graded players, including at PFF. Offensive tackle Caleb Jones, through 2 weeks of the preseason, was the 14th highest graded rookie by PFF. Zach Tom was 12. I think we all know, like, Zach Tom isn't on the roster bubble discussion. He's on the starter discussion, so that's why we haven't really talked much about him. Another great week from Zach Tom. I think still 0 allowed pressures. He had his first penalty, illegal hands to the face, but 6'9", 370-pound tackle Caleb Jones,
Huge.
mauling in the run game.
Huge.
Do you think is he making the roster, or is he probably out?
Looking at kind of who's ahead of him, he's a tackle, so we have two when they're healthy, all pro level tackles.
Yep.
So I could see him making it. I think if they're going to keep a rookie, they keep Tom, and then hopefully Caleb Jones again goes to the practice squad. But there's definitely a reality where Caleb Jones makes it. I would not be surprised if they kept him.
Yeah, one of those either way guys. I think there's going to be people who are probably outraged about some of these either way guys, but I think as long as it's not like we talked about with the receivers, as long as it's not like 2 or all 3 of those 3 guys not making it, it seems like okay, yeah, that's fine.
Right. And the problem is like I'm looking at like I guess Spot Track probably isn't the best place to look at roster depth, but like Bakhtiari, Jenkins, Myers, Newman, Runyon, Ryan, Tom, Jake Hansen, Rasheed Walker, Caleb Jones. Like Only
Yeah.
those last three are ones that are on the bubble. And I think Rasheed Walker was playing pretty well last night.
Yeah, I think
I
he
didn't.
was too.
So it's
Yeah,
just
you
tough.
can tell why they traded a guy, right? I mean, it
Yeah,
sucks
you
to
can
only
tell
get a
why.
seventh round
Right,
pick, but you can tell why they traded an
right.
offensive lineman.
Right. They just have so much depth there that it's tough.
They did what I do on Madden before cut day when you're like, oh, I'm not going to cut a 70 overall. Somebody will give me a sixth rounder for this guy. They actually
Right,
did. And it's a smart thing to do, right? Why give a guy
right.
away for free
But they may as well keep all. They may keep them all too.
at
The
practice
offensive
squad?
line, yeah, offensive
Yeah.
line is 5 players, and if you have one injury, it's next man up, and
Yep.
that number goes from needing 5 offensive linemen a week for sure to needing 10 real fast when linemen get hurt. So
Yeah.
I could see him
100%.
I could see him keeping Caleb Jones all the way down, like keeping 9. So
Yeah. Yeah.
um
I mean, again, that also is a position so complicated by, what is the internal expectation? I'm sure they're being cautious like you are with especially Bach, but
yeah,
if the thought is we do think we'll have Jenkins and Bakhtiari by, week 3, week 4, whatever, and I'm just literally making this up, but then you're like, okay, maybe we don't need Caleb Jones if we're going to bring those two guys back into the fold. Not that you should read Caleb Jones' roster spot into those
right.
guys' things, but there's so many factors that go into, it's unfortunate for the players, right? Caleb Jones played well in the preseason. There's just so much more beyond his control that goes into whether he has a spot on the Packers next week.
Right. So yeah, well, I guess we'll see come Tuesday.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else from preseason standing? I can't believe we got an hour
I know.
on Packers Chiefs preseason.
Post game.
Yeah.
But I'm long winded. We talked about this and
Yeah.
the opener. So no, I don't have anything else. Do you?
No. I think I'm all set. I'm ready for quote unquote real football. Packers Vikings week 1. Is it noon? September 11th. I think maybe it's
I'm
3.
almost certain it's noon.
I feel like Packers Vikings has to be in. I mean, come on. No, it's 3:25.
Of course it is.
Yep. 3:25. Packers at Vikings. So week 1 coming up. We got a couple weeks.
Prime time.
Now. We can dive into Brewers and get our heart broken as we wait for cut day.
Yep. So thank you for listening, everybody. Be sure to listen to the rest of the GSPN family pods. The Brewers have a big series against the Cubs coming up this weekend at home. Hopefully it's way more fruitful than the last series against the Cubs, but check out Andrew and Adam at Cruising for a Bruising over there on Sunday for that wrap up. Buck season's a little bit ways away, but they can find you and Rohan at Eurostep, and then Adam and Jordan with Win and 6. So we got all the Wisconsin sports coverage.
You're too selfless.
GSPN.
Subscribe to this podcast. This is episode 2. We need to focus a little bit more right here. So if you're listening, whether it's on YouTube, on Apple, Spotify, wherever, subscribe to Talking to Tundra and leave a rating and review. We're going to make Numac start reading them soon. So make sure to leave a rating and review. 5 stars. We only read 5 stars.
Yes.
And if you want to, I don't use Apple. We don't have, you can leave a 5-star rating on the Spotify app. Screenshot that. Use the Discord forum at gspn.info. We put on a spot. You can write your own review, and we'll make Numac read that too. So
that's right.
If you want to make this man read ridiculous things, rate this podcast 5 stars.
Please and thank you. We'd all appreciate it. So that wraps it up for us for this week. We will be back next week after Tuesday cuts to give a rundown of any surprises or just review what the Packers decided to do. And then again early next week or possibly the week after. I'm trying to think of when the schedule is. Yeah, the week after for preseason. A
pre-game
regular season look at the Packers, go through the schedule a little bit, and talk about that first game of Packers Vikings. So thank you ever for listening, and thank you, Ty.
Thank you, Numac.